Well, certainly tonight's book launch is timely as Israeli and Palestinian negotiators restart a process of negotiations. We know that if those talks begin in earnest, one of the essential issues will be security for Israel and its 7 million plus citizens. In its 65 years, Israel has not known a day free of threats to its existence and near daily attempts to carry out acts of terror against it. Globally, there's a movement to boycott, divest from, and sanction Israel, and demonize and delegitimize it. A good part of that campaign focuses on charges of Israel as an apartheid state, frequently tied to Israel's security barrier. For decades, there was no security barrier, and Israelis paid a heavy price. Infiltration by terrorists resulted in all manner of deadly acts, sparing no gender, no age group, stabbings of teenagers waiting to enter discos, suicide attacks on lunchtime diners at pizza parlors and cafes, attacks on families in their homes or on the road. It all built to a crescendo. Israel had to act, as any country must, to protect its citizens. And it did, with the creation of the security barrier to once and for all keep the terrorists out. No country would have acted differently. The decision to create this barrier has been an unqualified success, saving countless lives and dealing a devastating blow to those who plot and carry out acts of terror. In return, Israel received international opprobrium for defending its people. A Berlin Wall, or even more perversely, a Warsaw Ghetto, were the descriptions applied to the barrier. A good part of the international community hypocritically was beside itself, ultimately leading to the issue being taken to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. I was in the old City Hall in The Hague when Richard Heideman defended Israel's right to defend itself in a hearing that brought to light much of what is in his new book, The Hague Odyssey. His brief before the ICJ on this issue on behalf of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies powerfully and persuasively laid out the case for Israel. Those looking not just for the history of how this case developed, but for the real-time arguments needed daily in a world of sanctions and delegitimization will find the Hague Odyssey indispensable. I've known Richard for over 30 years. He has been a tireless and an articulate campaigner and advocate for Israel's place in the world and for strong U.S.-Israel relations. As president of Bnai International, he led our organization's delegation to the 2001 Durban Conference on Racism, which, rather than focusing on the evils of racism, turned into one of the most infamous hate fests against the state of Israel and the Jewish people. Richard has spoken out inside the United Nations, an organization which should be spending its time focusing on myriad human rights abuses worldwide. He's spoken out against the inherent bias of that organization against Israel. In this book, Richard has combined his knowledge of the law with his desire to see Israel at peace in its neighborhood and in the broader international community, and produced what will be, for sure, an essential reference for diplomats, academics, the media, and for everyone who sees injustice and wants to call it out. I'm pleased now to introduce the author of The Hague Odyssey, my friend Richard D. Heideman.